morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. From very high above all the puerile and insipid and vapid bombastic twits in the Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns. No, I'm not, and I keep saying that. From the depths of the Middle Swamp in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday. It must be that I just want to be back at the Cowboy State Politics headquarters back in Sheridan. But alas, I'm stuck in the Middle Swamp. And it's a good thing, too. There's a lot of stuff going on with the Redcoats, a lot of it that we're going to talk about today. Apparently, some of them think that they really are conservative Republicans. Oh, yes. Always trying to convince their constituents that they're something that they're really not. And all you have to do is look at their voting records to find out exactly who these people are. And we're going to do a lot of that today. But first, it's Open Line Friday! Yes, my friends, it's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. The day where we talk about what you want to talk about. During the rest of the week, you kind of have to talk about what I want to talk about. But not on Friday. On Friday, if there's something on your mind, you just give me a call and we'll talk about it. And whatever the topic may be, maybe you want to talk about the Redcoats, maybe you think I'm off my rocker, maybe you want to talk about how incredibly conservative this legislature is going to be. Whatever it is, give me a phone call. The number here in the mobile studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. That's the telephone number that will get you directly to me. So it's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics, and I'll be taking your calls all morning long, if there are any. But we begin this morning with a section that, we should probably just call it Promises Made, Promises Kept. The Freedom Caucus yesterday completed their 5 and Dime Plan, and that was to pass 5 of their key pieces of legislation within the first days of the legislative session, the first 10 days. And actually, they got that accomplished in 8 days, so a little bit ahead of schedule. And a lot of these bills, there are pieces of legislation that we've been working on for a really long time. From the turkey vulture, and I quote, 5 key bills in the Wyoming Freedom Caucus's 5 and Dime Plan passed through the State House of Representatives within the first 8 days of the general session, putting the hardline group of Republicans 2 days ahead of schedule. Now, it's fascinating that the turkey vulture refers to the Freedom Caucus as hardline. They may as well just say right-wing extremists, or in the parlance of the media before the election, fascist, or whatever they want to call it. But in any case, the House of Representatives did pass 5 key pieces of legislation, and those were to require proof of a Wyoming residency and proof of United States citizenship. That was House Bill 157. Now, a lot of people already think that you have to do this to be able to vote in Wyoming. After all, in order to get a Wyoming resident fishing license, you have to live here a year. And if you lie on the little affidavit form that you fill out if you don't have your license handy, you can be assured that you'll get a visit from the Wyoming Game and Fish. Let us not forget, this is exactly why former Representative Liz Cheney, Crickets Cheney's senatorial campaign was derailed. She got caught fishing lying about being a Wyoming resident and had to drop out of the race. So most Wyoming citizens assume that you just have to be a Wyoming resident. Not so, because of Wyoming's exception to the motor voter law. And the motor voter law was passed during the Clinton administration, and that was to sync up your DMV registration with your voter registration. Wyoming didn't want to do that, And so, to get out of it, we instituted same-day registration. So you can pull up to the polls and register right at the polls. Well, and it just leads to a lot of assumptions that people just think that you have to be a Wyoming resident. But it's not true. And so now, with House Bill 157, that's passed the House of Representatives and it's on to the Senate, you would have to be able to prove Wyoming residency and United States citizenship to be able to vote. House Bill 116 invalidated driver's licenses issued to those who entered the country illegally. Now, a lot of other states, they'll issue driver's licenses to just about anybody. And so Wyoming decided, or the House of Representatives anyhow, decided that we're not going to honor those driver's licenses. Now, we heard a lot on the floor of the House of Representatives yesterday, or day before yesterday, that, wow, you can't really do that. You know, you have to, and this was Landon Brown. By the way, it's been 1,465 days since Landon Brown agreed to an interview on Cowboy state politics and then didn't show up. But anyway, old Landon got up to the podium and said, this is completely unconstitutional. We have to recognize the laws from other states. Unfortunately for our good pal Landon Brown, he forgot about some other laws that Wyoming doesn't recognize from other states, like legalizing weed in Colorado, or the no speed limit in Montana when that was a law. There's a whole bunch of other things that different states don't recognize from other states. This would be no different. And so anyway, House Bill 116 passed. There was banning diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in higher education, House Bill 147. This is one that the legislature has been working on for quite some time. In last year's session, there were a number of measures that were passed. One of them was kind of half vetoed by the governor. But House Bill 147 would completely do away with any diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in higher education. And the interesting thing about this bill is it doesn't just relate to those three terms. It says pretty much any bill that kind of relates to DEI is not going to be allowed in Wyoming education. There was the anti-ESG bill. Now, this one caused a lot of consternation across the state of Wyoming. The Wyoming media convinced people that it was going to cost the state $5 billion, when in reality, this anti-ESG bill just codifies the policies and practices of the state treasurer's office that we've been working off of since last year. So really, there's no change to this one. It just says that as far as our investments go, we have to focus on whatever's going to give us the highest rate of return. It can't have any influences from the left or the right. And this is just a lot of fear-mongering that's been happening in the Wyoming press. Wildpile had a big article that it's going to cost the state $5 billion. The Buffalo Bullcrap had a big article in it on this past Wednesday, how we're all going to go broke. None of that is true at all. And so anyway, House Bill 80, that one passed. And then the last one, and it is, let's see here. Yeah, I think that was it. The bills passed through the House committees and the House floor with little to no amendments. House Bill 169 had the highest volume of proposed amendments, but that's not unusual since it was a property tax bill. Now, that one, I've got some sound bites that I'm going to play for you later on in the program. The response from the Redcoats yesterday was what you would expect, that the whole state government is going to fall in amongst our ears, and we're going to be completely bankrupt, and all of us are going to perish, and schools are not going to be open, and you're not going to have police, and you're not going to have fire. Now, we need to just take a step back and really understand what's in this bill. First of all, it would give a 50% property tax reduction to residential property owners. Now, contrary to what the Wyoming media is trying to get you to believe, most property tax revenue does not come from residential property. In fact, a very small percentage of it does. It's under 25%. And this would give a 50% reduction for houses $1 million or less. So it doesn't cover the big, huge, monstrous mansions. It's just those houses that are valued at $1 million or less. So a 50% property tax reduction, and then the state would reimburse the county 50% of that. So really, we're not talking about a large amount of revenue, though if you listen to the media, they're going to tell you that, it's going to trash every economy, but most counties, they don't function on solely on the property taxes from residential properties. Secondarily, and I've got a soundbite where you're from our new pal, Alyssa Campbell, Bill Henderson's replacement. And I was really worried before the session got started. I thought with the exit of our favorite soundbite maker, Bill Henderson.
Oh,
yeah.
I think you got to stop and take a look at what you're doing here. I speak against this because it kind of reminds me of that fairy tale, Cinderella.
Now, considering the gravity of that soundbite, you could completely understand why I was worried that I wouldn't have a constant supply of material that's absolutely outrageous and ridiculous coming from the floor of the House. But Alyssa Campbell, and Julie Jarvis for that matter, have filled that role admirably. So that worry has been put to bed. But anyway, I've got a soundbite from her and our tax cuts for the rich, Steve Harshman. So, and there's a lot of mischaracterizations going on, and it's typical coming from the Redcoats. Of course, they don't want to decrease any amount of money that they're able to spend. But the truth is that, as I said, most counties don't function solely on residential property taxes. In fact, that only makes up a small percentage. And then when it comes to your cities and municipalities, those function on sales taxes almost exclusively. So that's not even affected. So a lot of this is just hyperbolic bullcrap, and you shouldn't even pay any attention to it. Let's see here. The other 4, 5, and dime bills were barely amended, with a couple of them seeing no change at all. The other one that I forgot to mention earlier was the getting rid of gun-free zones in Wyoming. That one sailed through the House. There were several attempts by Alyssa Campbell and others to amend it, but all of those failed. And so it heads to the Senate to see what they're going to do with it. My guess is that bill is probably going to go through. It passed last year with overwhelming support, so I see no reason why it shouldn't get the same treatment in the Senate as it did last year. So anyway, good job, Freedom Caucus. Promises made, promises kept. And, there was, before the session, there were a lot of articles written saying that the Freedom Caucus wasn't going to be able to pull this off, that that's too much legislation, that it's going to just on and on and on. And the other headline coming from yesterday's session was that the Appropriations Committee has been able to slash, let's see here, I think it was near $200 million. According to the Cowboy, Leo Trotsky-Wolfson, Freedom Caucus making good on promises of cuts and has slashed $195 million from the governor's budget. That's because the governor included a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't emergencies, and they weren't absolutely necessary, and they weren't unforeseen circumstances. It was just wishful thinking on behalf of the governor and all of the agencies. My guess is our good governor just told the agencies to throw everything against the wall and to see what sticks. One of those was $36 million for a shooting range at the Law Enforcement Academy in Douglas. That was absolutely ridiculous. There was a couple $1 million for the Tree Zoo in downtown Cheyenne. That was a big one last session, where we just absolutely had to spend so much money to keep up the Arboretum. Absolutely ridiculous. That's not the proper role of government. And it's a perfect example of the outrageous spending in Wyoming's government. There's a whole lot of things that we spend money on that are completely outside of the role of government and that we really ought to get rid of anyway. But quoting from Trotsky's article, on Thursday, the committee pulled $100 million from Governor Mark Gordon's Energy Projects Matching Funds Initiative. This money became a target of the legislature last year due to the governor having unilateral discretion over awarding money and the types of projects funded. This was the $350 million for Governor Gordon's energy green projects, whatever they want to call them. And so it's out. Representative John Baer, co-chair of the Joint Appropriations Committee, criticized the arrangement and describing it as not a natural market. He's talking about all these green energy grants that the governor could have given out. Quote, I think it's important that we minimize the funds that are out there for these matching funds. The state leveraged $10 million of this money to secure a $40 million grant from the Department of Energy to support a carbon capture project brought by a company called Frontier Carbon Solutions. Baer said that Frontier only put up $1 million for that particular grant and has no customers to date in Wyoming. And, of course, Trotsky has to insert his own opinion here. The DOE grant covers a portion of the Frontier's overall work in Wyoming, which has invested much more than $1 million. Whatever. And it's typical of the cow pie. Trotsky has to put his opinion in there, and he tries to claim that it's fact-checking, but it's really not. Anyway, when we come back, more from the Wyoming legislature. There's a ton that happened yesterday, and we're going to get to all of it, well, as much as we possibly can, on Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. More in a minute. Christmas is over, and all of the fun holiday cheer has been had, and what are we all left with? Frigid Wyoming weather. Below freezing temperatures that you still have to go out in. That's right, you do have to go back to work at one point or another. And not to scare you, but think about this. Every single morning you get to scrape the ice off of your windshield. Now, while I can't do anything with that, I can make sure that your feet stay nice and toasty warm while you're doing it. All you have to do is order a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. And to get you a pair of them, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. Wyoming's conservative voice, documented to be almost always right, 98.97% of the time. That's right, my friends. I'm your host, David Iverson, on Cowboy State Politics Live. Before the break, and by the way, it's Open Line Friday, and if you want to be part of the show, the phone number here to reach me in the Middle Swamp is 307-374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call if there's something on your mind that you want to talk about, 307-374-8989. Now, before the break, I was telling you about the 5 and Dime Plan that passed out of the House of Representatives, and now it's headed towards the Senate. Now, of course, Tara Nethercott, the new Majority Floor Leader, who has been a redcoat her entire career, weighed in. And according to, and I think this one's in the Turkey Vulture. Here's what Nethercott said about all those bills. According to Senate leaders, let's hear. Nethercott also noted a majority of the House members are freshman lawmakers. Quote, I'm concerned with the level of freshman House members, Nethercott said. Certainly, learning that skill set takes a little time. Nethercott said she feels the weight of some of those House bills coming over and the work that may be required. An amended bill, Nethercott said, does not mean something is wrong with it, but instead it means the legislation is going through the process to better serve the people. This is a positive thing, Nethercott said, adding that good legislation can take years to pass. Every bill needs review, and every bill likely needs work, Nethercott said. Most bills actually should be amended and require debate in order to create thoughtful, lawful legislation that does what it is intended to do. Freedom Caucus leadership pushed back on the idea that these bills are being rushed through the House. Chairwoman Rachel Rodriguez-Williams told the Wyoming Tribune-Eagle, the Wyoming Turkey Vulture, that this is an engaged freshman class who are bringing expertise as politically active Wyoming citizens. And that's perhaps the number one thing that irritates the Redcoats more than anything is that members of the grassroots were successful in their elections and that they're bringing the concerns and the ideas of normal, everyday Wyoming citizens to the legislature. Redcoats like Tara Nethercott, and there's a lot of them. We're just using her as an example. They're kind of elitists, and they tend to believe, and I think their legislative record proves this, that they have the best ideas, and to heck with any of these Johnny-come-latelys or whatever you want to call them. And you need no further evidence of this than the budget battle last year. Ogden Driscoll, of course, this was all a total setup, but anyway, Ogden Driscoll put a number of conservatives on the conference committee for the budget. They had one meeting, and then Ogden Driscoll said, "This isn't working," trashed that committee, and appointed a whole new one with Tara Nethercott himself and Chi-Com Som Albert Summers, and they pushed through a budget that was $1.5 billion more than what the House had already set up. So anyway, I don't think that you should put too much weight into what Tara Nethercott says. The proof is going to be in the pudding, and we have to wait and see what the Senate is going to do with this 5 and dime plan. I happen to be a little bit on the pessimistic side about what's going to happen, but, really we don't know. Maybe the Senate will be as completely conservative as they led us all to believe. Maybe not, but we don't really know, and we'll have to wait to find out. So I was speaking of elitists in the Wyoming legislature, and we've got two of them that have already showed their cards, new cards in the Wyoming House of Representatives. And as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, one of those is going to be my favorite, our pal, Alyssa Campbell. Now, they were debating a tax bill, and here is what Alyssa Campbell said. Apparently, she doesn't think you're smart enough to completely understand that what your property taxes go to. Apparently, you don't understand that we're going to completely bring the entire Wyoming government down around our ears. But just take a listen to what she said.
Previous presenters, I absolutely support doing the people's work. And I think the challenge with that is the number of our constituents that don't understand
you're just too
how
stupid.
property taxes relate to our cities, our counties, our school districts. They don't understand that connection. So while we are obligated, yes, to follow through on that promise of decrease in property taxes, we are also obligated, if we make that decision, to backfill that for our cities and our counties.
Oh, yes. You see, you are just too stupid to understand how our tax structure works, and you just really have no understanding, and you just have to leave it to us. Alyssa Campbell. By the way, it was Alyssa Campbell that proposed, I don't know how many amendments on the House Bill 172, the ban of gun-free zones in Wyoming. I think it was yesterday on the program, I played a long list of sound bites from Alyssa Campbell. How you really don't have rights, to carry a gun anywhere you want, and she has to restrict it all. But according to Alyssa Campbell, you're just too stupid. And you just can't understand it. Now, here's another one, another favorite of the program, Julie Jarvis. This one about made me, oh man, I about came out of my chair when I heard this. Listen to it.
As a conservative Republican,
what?
I do believe that we need to look seriously.
Oh, Julie Jarvis, the conservative Republican. Of course, her voting record is she votes with the Democrats more than Carly Provenza does. And Carly Provenza is a Democrat. The truth is that Julie Jarvis is not a conservative Republican, and her votes thus far into the session, we're only 25% of the way through with this legislative session, but she has proved herself to be an absolute redcoat. Now, here is the rest of the soundbite from, I'm a conservative Republican. This one's fascinating because she gets 2 points of order in the same speech, and it is, it's pretty interesting. Let's listen to it, and then I'll explain it.
As a conservative Republican, I do believe that we need to look seriously at property.
What's your Representative Wasserberger? Please wait to be acknowledged.
Okay,
Representative Wasserberger. Ladies and gentlemen, I've heard the term several times yesterday, conservative, Republican. Guys, we have people that are representing from other parties and other affiliations. Please be respectful of the terms you're using. Thank you.
Okay, hold on.
Thank you.
Just a second right there. We'll just hold on. Now, Wasserberger is a conservative. I mean, he's one of the younger members of the House of Representatives. But what he was doing there is trying to prevent people like Julie Jarvis from claiming that they are something that they are not. And on the floor of the House, they have some interesting rules. You can't mention proper names, shouldn't refer to political parties on the floor of the House. And so that's why he was objecting to that. But it gets better. And let's just listen to the rest of it.
Representative Jarvis, please proceed.
I am for, and I've heard my community loud and clear that they do feel that property taxes are too high. And I do believe that we were elected to address that issue. I'm not for this amendment, but I am not for this bill.
Of course you're not, because you're
why I'm not for this amendment, or I'm against the bill, is 50% property tax cut. When you look at the organizations and the institutions and the cities and the counties that benefit from property tax directly, when you cut 50% and you backfill 25%.
Okay,
I've never professed.
Okay, stop. All right, it is not 25%, and the math here just really irritates me. So there is a 50% tax cut for residential property that is valued at $1 million or less, and the state will reimburse 50% of that. So yes, I guess that you could say that is 25%, but really it is not cutting 50% of the revenue for counties and cities and towns. That's just not the case. Most counties don't get any more than a quarter of their revenue from residential property taxes. Most of it comes from oil and gas, companies, machine, a whole bunch of different things. But a very small amount comes from residential property taxes. All right, let's continue.
To be mathematically on the money, but I appreciate my good representative from the same place.
Here we go, number 2.
Representative.
What is your point?
We're debating the amendment, not the bill.
Mm-hmm.
Please stick to the amendment.
It's the amendment. I was just talking about the money. Okay.
No.
But
address representatives now just for a minute. Let's just pull a woe here. Always address anything that you have to say to the chair first. I do not want to be any discussion back and forth between representatives. The point of order was directed to the chair. We acted on that point of order. Representative, I would remind you to please stick to the bill. You did reference specifically about your discussion and your decision on the bill. Please stick to the amendment. All addressing to the chair, ladies and gentlemen. Let's keep this under control.
Okay, so Chip Nyman has had to admonish 2 representatives multiple times, and that's Alyssa Campbell and Julie Jarvis. And what happens is they think they have to justify their position when there's a point of order called. And in parliamentary procedure, first of all, you address all of your comments to the chair. If there is a point of order, that is addressed to the chair. And the chair has to rule on the point of order before you get to continue. And the reason why I continue hammering on this point is it shows the elitism of some of the members of the House of Representatives, that somehow a point of order is completely illegitimate and they can talk it down. That's not how the House of Representatives works. Even though it may work in the school system, whatever Julie Jarvis says, it doesn't work in the House of Representatives. This has been pretty much a constant refrain for both Representative Campbell and Representative Jarvis. So anyway, I mean, you've got a couple of people in there that just think that they're elitists. I think it's very clear when you listen to what Alyssa Campbell and what Julie Jarvis says. And I mean, it just, that's the best way that I can explain it. There's really no substance to their arguments. Instead, that, we can't cut any spending. We have to continue spending. And if we cut anything, it's going to kill us all. Now, next, and Harshman, and you would expect that Harshman would get in on this conversation because, of course, he's the guy that says that all of these tax cuts are really just, they're just going to benefit the rich. Now, remember, this is from, let's see here, last year when they were talking about the 4% cap on the increases of residential property taxes. All right, and don't forget that Steve Harshman is the guy that said this.
So what's happened in these states that have done caps, and some of them are wealthy states, but really who's benefited? The rich are going to benefit the most. They're going to benefit the most.
Okay, so it's tax cuts for the rich. They're the ones that are going to benefit. Now, Harshman continued this theme yesterday, and it's the same sort of thing. They're talking about a similar bill, and the problem is, and Harshman's problem, rather, is that he doesn't really like the People's Initiative that is going to be on the ballot in 2 years. Actually, 1 year, but 2 years when it gets to November, I guess. But he really doesn't like that. And so this bill is really to fill 2025 and 2026 property taxes. That's the whole point. Then the initiative will come up for a vote, and we'll see how the people vote on it. My guess is that thing's going to pass overwhelmingly. But anyway, here is what Steve Harshman had to say about it.
The bill tries to give back half of that for the next 2 years, basically $100 million a year. So as you look at those numbers, half of that will be restored to each of those. Does that make sense? I just want to make sure we're looking at that. So half of that will be restored. So like the first county there is Albany, and I think we can say county names now. 2.1 million to their communities, the small towns, and their special districts. Half of that will be restored. So they'll take a...
Now, I realize this is a bit of Harshman filibustering word salad, but you have to get the context of what he's saying. Pretty soon in the soundbite, he's going to go on the whole tax cuts for the rich binge, which he did. I mean, I don't know how long this speech was, but it was pretty long. Most House speeches are, 2 to 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes at the longest. But Harshman continued a really long time on this one. Just listen close. He'll go into the tax cuts for the rich business here in a minute.
$1 million cut. The county, 12 mills in that county will take just about $1 million cut too. They're almost 2 million. So, and then this thing goes away in 2 years and we have an election. And the election's on 50% for everybody. And just so you know, that election, and we just talked about the richest county in America, about 90% of the benefit from that amendment will go to that county. 90% of the benefit's going to go to one county in the state if that thing passes in a couple of years. And there's going to be a lot of education about that. 15% of the voters in each county signed on that, but is that really what we want? 90% of that to go to one county in the state?
Okay, so there's this misconception in the Wyoming House of Representatives that somehow you have to pay for tax cuts. This is rhetoric we hear in the United States Congress, that if you give a tax cut, somehow you have to pay for it. Really what they're saying is that they have to somehow figure out a way to continue their level of spending with the tax cut there. When Harshman says 90% of the benefit is going to go to Teton County, he's trying to get you to believe that somehow the state of Wyoming is going to write a gigantic check to Teton County. That's not it at all. And frankly, it doesn't really matter if you're rich or not. You still pay property taxes, and we don't pass legislation that benefits one county over another. That's called a special law. It's specifically prohibited in the Constitution. If you're going to give a tax cut, it needs to be given to everybody. We can't pick winners and losers. But what Harshman is trying to do here is play the whole, the rich against the poor thing. And he does that all of the time. So let's continue. Let's listen to a little bit more of it.
Richest people in the richest county in the world, 50% off of the total value. That's why I think I like this bill, because it's got $1 million cap. It really is a big benefit for 98% or more of Wyomingites. It's a huge deal. And we passed the longtime Wyoming folks exemption, which people are filling out like crazy.
Yeah. Okay.
You got to go.
So anyway, Harshman with the tax cut is going to go to the richest Wyoming citizens. It's the same refrain. We shouldn't give tax credits to people that can afford to pay their taxes. That's absolutely ridiculous. I've never worked for a poor person in my life, and just because they happen to own a house that's $2 million, $5 million, it doesn't really matter how big it is. That doesn't mean that they should be soaked for outrageous property taxes. It's absolutely socialist thinking. But we really shouldn't expect anything more from Steve Harshman. I mean, that's what he's been doing his entire career. Tax the rich, give it to the poor, socialism at its finest. But that's Steve Harshman. When we come back, we'll do a little bit of national news on Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics Live every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on the Independence Network. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Cowboy State Politics is sponsored by FreedomGoldUSA.com. They are the working man's gold company. The economy is in turmoil. The stock market pretty much is out of control, and you never know what's going to happen with your finances or your income. One way that you can shore up everything is by investing in gold and silver. Go to freedomgoldusa.com/David for a free interview to discuss your options and find out if gold or silver is right for you. One more time, that's freedomgoldusa.com/David. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics Live on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much anywhere that you can get any of your social media, you'll find Cowboy State Politics. This is Wyoming's most listened to conservative program. Welcome back to the show, my friends. Cowboy State Politics Live, and I, of course, am your host, David Iverson, Wyoming's conservative voice. Now, before the break, we were talking about Steve Harshman and his ridiculous tax cuts for the rich rhetoric. But a lot of that is, and it's funny because Steve Harshman accuses conservatives all the time of listening to the national media and the national talking points, but he fails to realize that it is he who actually listens to that stuff. That it's always, Right after the inauguration, we heard a lot of this whole, the Trump tax cuts are only going to affect the richest 1% and all. I mean, the common refrain. And so for Steve Harshman to, even suggest this is absolutely ridiculous. Well, if you thought that the Trump's inauguration was going to change anything in Washington, D.C., change the rhetoric from what the Redcoats have been saying all along, and the Democrats, you are sadly mistaken. In fact, Adam Schiff, who would have guessed that Adam Schiff would be one of the first people? But from Breitbart yesterday, Senator Adam Schiff said Wednesday on PMS NBC's The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell that Trump doesn't give a rat's what about law enforcement. Schiff said these people he just pardoned were beating police officers within an inch of their life. They were bear spraying them. They were gouging them. They were hitting them with baseball bats and hockey sticks. These are the people that Donald Trump just pardoned. So one thing is abundantly clear. He doesn't give a rat's beep about law enforcement. That much is clear. Listen to Adam Schiff say it himself.
These people he just pardoned were beating police officers within an inch of their life. They were bear spraying them. They were gouging them. Were hitting them with baseball bats and hockey sticks. These are the people Donald Trump just pardoned. So one thing is abundantly clear. He doesn't give a rat's ass about law enforcement. That much is clear.
So if you thought that the Trump's second administration was going to be any different, from the Democrats' perspective anyway, than the first one, you are sadly mistaken. The Democrats really don't know what to do with this election. It has been a really long time since Republicans won the popular vote and the Electoral College at the same time. So their main narrative, I mean, they've been put back on their heels simply because none of their talking points are going to work anymore. They can't say that he's an illegitimate president. They can't say that the election wasn't absolutely legitimate. They really can't say, at least honestly, that Trump doesn't have a mandate. And so they have to go back to their original talking points, that Republicans are evil, that they hate police, that they hate poor people. But this is just one example of what you're going to hear from the mainstream media. However, there are other representatives in Congress that are going along with Trump's agenda. And I mean, if you thought that the Republicans weren't just going to stomp on the gas, you're sadly mistaken. They've got a mandate, and they should absolutely use it. Now, one of the laws that I've been really critical about on Cowboy state politics is the FACE Act. Now, the FACE Act is the one that says that you can't prevent anybody from accessing an abortion clinic. It's also the law that has been used to prosecute a lot of different people for singing hymns outside of an abortion clinic, of praying outside of an abortion clinic. There was one lady, and I can't remember her name, but she was sentenced to 30 years for just singing a hymn outside of an abortion clinic. Well, Representative Chip Roy has reintroduced a bill to repeal the FACE Act. And I quote from Breitbart yesterday, Representative Chip Roy reintroduced a bill on Tuesday that would repeal a law former President Joe Biden's Department of Justice used to put pro-life advocates in prison. The FACE Act repeal of 2025 would get rid of the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, or FACE, a law passed in 1994 which prohibits violent, threatening, damaging, or obstructive conduct intended to injure, intimidate, or interfere with the right to seek, obtain, provide reproductive health services. That's a quotation from the FACE Act. The act was written to equally protect abortion clinics, pro-life pregnancy resource centers, and churches. However, 97% of FACE Act cases since the law's inception have been against pro-life advocates. Quote, Americans just spent the last 4 years targeted by a weaponized justice system. The FACE Act was one of the primary weapons of abuse, being used to politically target, arrest, and jail pro-life Americans for speaking out and standing up for life, Roy said in a statement. While President Trump and his team are already fast at work reversing the damage of the January 6th political prosecutions and persecutions through pardons and commutations, I am hopeful that those targeted under the FACE Act will be given similar relief. But importantly, we in Congress need to do our part to eliminate the laws used for the weaponization, including the FACE Act. And just on face, no pun intended, this law is absurd. Now, you can't prevent anybody from entering any building. I mean, we already have laws about that. But one that specifically relates to abortion clinics and that has been used to demonize, to persecute, as Chip Roy said, the people that just want to make those aware. Now, there's a bill in the Wyoming legislature right now that would say that if you're going to get a chemical abortion, that you have to get an ultrasound first. Now, probably some members in Congress would view that as a violation of the FACE Act, saying that you have to go through get an ultrasound first. But there's been a lot of studies that have shown that if a would-be mother gets an ultrasound before an abortion, that it is highly likely that they won't go through with it. That's why that bill is up. And in Wyoming, we had Melissa Owens and Jackson just strike down Wyoming's abortion bans in an absurd opinion, by the way, that abortion is health care. So as Republicans, as conservatives, we have to stand up for life. That is, it's number one on the Republican Party platform. It ought to be number one on the agenda of every conservative, that we protect as many babies as possible. Oh, by the way, did you see where the president of Planned Parenthood died on Inauguration Day? She had been responsible for the deaths of 4 million babies. I can't even imagine what her afterlife is like. But absolutely amazing. And, I mean, I guess people get what they deserve. And at least they should. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk about California and the wildfires and how they have been for a long time using Wyoming's resources. But if they're not going to use them to fight fire, why should we continue to give them to them? There's an article in Breitbart. We're going to talk about it next. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a better source of news, information, and entertainment than right here on the Independence Network. Now, we're making a few changes, moving a couple things around, out with the old and in with the new, and that whole spiel. Of course, you could listen to my program, The Ramble Room with Ken Pendergraft, Locked and Loaded with the good Representative Tony Locke from Casper. There's a whole bunch more coming on the Independence Network. Also, don't forget to check out the articles section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live, Open Line Friday. Let's go to our pal Jerry in Rock Springs. Jerry, welcome to the program.
Hey, good morning.
How's it going down in Rock Springs today, my friend?
It's doing pretty good. It's about 30 degrees warmer than it was a few days ago at this time.
Oh, man, it has been absolutely frigid down here in the middle swamp.
Well, that's why I keep those Californians out, though.
Very true, very true. So what do you think about the session so
Even
far,
though
Jerry?
I grew up in California, too. Harshman, I hope everybody has heard what he has to say, because he must think we are all stupid.
He does.
I don't agree with everything that happens in Teton, but they are citizens. They are my neighbors. And we live in a country of opportunity, and we are supposed to be equal with all our laws. I hope he is exposed big time.
Well, Harshman is one of these people that believes we can pick winners and losers. And if you look back on his legislative career, I mean, he's done that in spades. And it's just like every session, every single session.
I probably shouldn't say this, but I think Cheney must have peed on his leg or something other, and he never washed his jeans.
That's incredible. Yeah. She probably did.
I don't know. They need to scrub that building down real good.
Well, it's fascinating. I've been talking about it all week, but there are a number of people that had just got elected that seem to have the same attitude as a lot of the redcoats that we just got rid of. I mean, they're elitists. They think that they know better. And I mean, I've played a lot of sound bites from Alyssa Campbell and Julie Jarvis, and they're just the two most recent redcoats that have really been vocal about, you're too stupid. You don't understand how property taxes work, and you just have to leave it to us, and we'll tell you what you're going to do. And the truth is, Jerry, most people understand property taxes. We've been paying them a long time, and the reason that the People's Initiative, the so-called People's Initiative, got voted to go on the ballot is we're sick of it. We're sick of Harshman. We're sick of the elitism, and we're just tired of them spending our money like drunken sailors.
That's true, and the sad part about it is these people believe that.
Oh,
they
yeah.
believe what they're saying.
Yep.
They think we're stupid.
Well, and I think that's kind of why I like the tax bill that was brought up yesterday, because there's a lot of representatives that they see the handwriting on the wall, and they know that they better figure something out. And even if it's for just 2 years, 2025 and 2026, which is what that bill was yesterday. But because when that initiative hits the ballot, I think it's going to pass overwhelmingly. And then what are they going to do?
Yeah. And I think the 2-year deal is good. It's going to expose, the benefits of it.
Absolutely. And the reality is that we don't get most of our tax revenue from residential property. Most of it comes from, industrial sources, oil and gas, those types of things. But only a very small percentage of it comes from residential property taxes, unless you're in Teton County. And the truth is that Teton County, their property taxes fund a lot of the stuff that happens in Wyoming. And, I absolutely see no reason why any of us should listen to anything that Harshman has to say.
No, I get sick of hearing him. Maybe he'll be gone. Is he up for election in 26?
Oh, yeah, everybody in the House is every 2 years. We got to get somebody to run against him, though. That was he ran unopposed in the last election.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
Jerry,
the bad part about it.
Yeah, well, Jerry, thanks for the call. You have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you on Monday.
All right, and God bless our republic.
God bless our republic. Thanks to Jerry for calling in. If you want to call in and be part of the program, the phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989, Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. We've got about 8 minutes left in the program, so if you want to talk about something, you still have some time to call in. So I referenced, a comment, really, by President Trump, in which he said that California shouldn't get disaster money until they change their water policies. And that was the big problem with all these California wildfires. They just didn't pay any attention to prevention, and they never have. It is not normal for there to be massive wildfires every single year. Not filling of the reservoirs, not making sure that the fire hydrants had water. I mean, all of that it is absolutely the fault of the government there. And if they're not going to change those policies, you and me and every other American should not be footing the bill for them to just waste money to rebuild houses that are just going to get burned down again. We have to have reform before we give any cash. And, according to, and I believe this one comes from The Blaze, but I didn't put the source down. Anyway, and I quote, during a portion of an interview aired on Wednesday's broadcast of the Fox News channel's Hannity, President Donald Trump argued that California shouldn't get any money for disaster relief until there are changes made to the state's water policies. Host Sean Hannity asked, quote, will you give, obviously, Americans want to help other Americans in need. Fair enough, we do that. Should the money be contingent on them practicing the science of forestry? Trump answered, quote, I don't think we should give California anything until they let water flow down into there. And then Hannity interrupted him, which is what he does all the time, from north to south. Trump continued. This is a political thing. I don't know what it is. They talk about the Delta smelt, which is that stupid little fish they claimed that they were saving. They say it's an endangered species. Well, how is it endangered? No wonder it's endangered. It's not getting any water. Well, that's exactly right. Their environmental policies have overridden common sense in California. Now, if you'll notice, Wyoming, yeah, we had a bad fire year this past summer. But it's not every year that we have a gigantic fire. It's because we manage the resources that we have. If California had been taking care of logging and cutting brush, a lot of these fires wouldn't have cropped up. But instead, they're not allowing logging. They're not allowing cleaning up of down timber. They're not allowing any of that. And so it's no wonder why that tinderbox didn't go up sooner. And it pretty much does every single year. But I agree with President Trump. We shouldn't give them any cash until they're willing to make some changes to where they can use the resources that we're going to give them, where they, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And if we're just going to give them money, we're putting a Band-Aid on a situation that is absolutely going to continue. And we're going to have another fire if they don't make some changes. Similarly, California uses a lot of Wyoming's water. And so, I see no reason why we shouldn't renegotiate that water agreement. If they're not going to use it for, proper purpose of fire prevention, then I don't think that we should give it to them. We should renegotiate the contract and, make sure that thing doesn't burst into flames again. Let's see here. Let's go. We've got about 4 minutes left in the program. So there's a bill, I mentioned this earlier, requiring an ultrasound before the pill flies through the committee. From the Wyoming Turkey Vulture, and I quote, "A bill requiring an ultrasound before women can receive an abortion pill passed easily through the House committee on Wednesday, despite testimony from healthcare workers arguing that rural women will be put at risk." House Speaker and Wyoming Freedom Caucus member Chip Nyman brought back a bill from last year that requires women to get an ultrasound within the 48-hour time period before having a chemical abortion, such as swallowing a pill. House Bill 64 requires women to have an ultrasound so they view the active ultrasound of the unborn baby and hear the heartbeat of the unborn baby, if the heartbeat is audible, before picking up abortion medication from a doctor or a pharmacist. Violations will be classified as a felony with up to a $20,000 fine, up to 5 years imprisonment, or both. Nyman told members of the House Labor, Health, and Social Services Committee that, quote, "This is a piece of compassionate legislation. Compassion of the chance to be able to hear that heartbeat and to be able to know that that baby is real," Nyman said on Wednesday. And this is what abortion advocates do all the time. In order to get their legislation pushed through, they have to dehumanize baby. That's why you hear a lot of these abortion activists refer to an unborn baby as a fetus. They use clinical terms, and so that it allows us to divest the humanity away from the act. The truth is, you're killing a baby. And I've made this argument a lot of times. There are only three things that are required for human life, and that is cell division, that you can convert energy into food, and that you have response to stimuli. That's it. That's all that's required for life. If you open up any biology textbook, that's what it says. And so we have to stop dehumanizing unborn babies. When we use language like fetus or God forbid something even less, it allows us to take the humanity out of it, and then we can do some really horrible things like support abortion. So hopefully I have no doubt that this bill will sail through the House of Representatives. I haven't looked at the list today. Maybe it's up on the floor today. But I have no doubt that it'll pass the House. The question is, will it get through the Senate? And again, there's a lot of questions that remain about what's going to happen in the Wyoming Senate. I have little confidence that they'll be half as conservative as the House of Representatives. But we're just going to have to wait and see. Well, we've only got about a minute left in the show. Don't forget about Weekend Update tomorrow on the podcast. I'm going to do kind of a review of everything that's been going on. We're going to have lots of sound bites, and I'll get you ready for the weekend. So make sure that you don't miss the podcast. By the way, you should subscribe and follow the show. The way that you can do that is from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way that you don't miss a minute of the show. Well, make sure that you have a good weekend. For now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, and we're not at the base of the Bighorns anymore. I just want to be there. But from the Middle Swamp, I'm David Iverson. This is Cowboy State Politics. Have a good weekend.